Okay, let's see if stream quality stays good. Okay. Alright, looks like stream quality is better than it was last night. Bitrate's fluctuating a little bit, but at least we're not dropping any frames. At least doesn't look like we're dropping any frames. Alright, sweet. So, welcome to the PTS Summerset Week 5. So this is the final week of the PTS, so this is the final set of patch notes that we managed to get from us on the PTS. And the long-awaited Acuity nerf has arrived. So we were kind of wondering how they were going to nerf Acuity. There were a bunch of ideas floated around. We knew it was going to probably be coming eventually, we just didn't know in what form, when, or when they were going to be doing it. So they managed to change it. So right now on live I should say, mechanical Acuity, it's whenever you deal any damage, so remove direct, you have 50% chance of getting the effect. Now on the PTS you can see here it says whenever you deal direct damage. So that's pretty much gonna be some people are calling it a nerf, other people are calling it a buff. For me, it's more of a change, so it's not really a nerf, it's not really a buff. It really depends on basically your level of skill as a player. I don't really see this as necessarily as a nerf for a lot of classes. The only classes that I think you'll see this coming as a nerf are going to be Magicka DPS that are not using Force Pulse as their spammable. That's probably the only nerf there is, and I've seen a couple of tests done already, and basically what it looks like is it's a small drop in your uptime. The lowest uptime that I've seen was around like 21%, but some people are still able to get that 25-26% uptime that we've come to expect from mechanical Acuity. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a nerf at all, if you even want to consider it as a nerf. So you know, take that as you will. I think, and a lot of other people that I've been talking with about these changes kind of all agree that this isn't really what we would call a nerf, it's just a change, and it is going to end up changing how we end up playing with mechanical Acuity. So your light weaving is going to be a lot more important. You know, being able to get all those enchants off is also going to be very important, because enchants, damaged enchants I should say, count as direct damage. And you might see Magsorks, they're not going to really be changing because Force Pulse counts as 3 direct hits. So something like a ranged Magplar might end up using Force Pulse instead of any weapon like we anticipated. So definitely going to be a change, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a nerf. So what we're going to be testing today is basically how badly are these nerfs, and you know, if there is a severe change in, you know, DPS potential, what are the alternative sets that we can use besides mechanical Acuity. Now Reliquin, right now the proc does count as direct melee damage. We know that because it procs Selene. So if you are a stamina DPS that's running Reliquins, this isn't really going to be that bad of a nerf, because as long as Reliquin is up, you're constantly dealing direct damage every about like I think it's every like 3/4 of a second is when the Reliquin procs are hitting. So if you're using Reliquin, it's not really much of a nerf. But if you're not using Reliquin, like a lot of us won't be able to use Reliquin right away because you have to do Cloud Arrest. We'll play around with having VO or War Machine instead and see if Acuity still performs as well as it did on live. And if it doesn't, then what other sets can we use instead of Acuity? Now do remember that I did test a couple of other sets. My previous stream we tested out Ravager and we tested out Advancing Warrior, and they were both within 1% of Acuity. So those two sets are probably going to be what people are going to turn to. So that's Ravager from Velastarius and Advancing Warrior from Hellroth Citadel. So we'll have to compare those two sets with Acuity without Reliquin and see how the Acuity holds out against those two sets now. So first things first, we're going to just do the standard Acuity, Selene's, Reliquin on the Stamina Nightblade, see if there's any changes. The highest I've managed to hit was about like 52k, but the average is probably close to 51k. It all depends on how well I weave and stuff. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. If you hear squeaking, that's because the dogs just got new toys. They got their bark box today, so you might hear some dog squeaks in the background. Let me just check, make sure I have poisons and weapon enchants are good. Okay. So again, the metric to beat is going to be around 51k. So if we hit 51k, then we know Acuity is pretty much not a change at all. If we get lower than 51k, if we hit like maybe 49k or 50k, and there's not something like a lag spike halfway through, then we could say that it is a small nerf to Acuity. But I don't see this being a buff. This is definitely not necessarily a big buff at all. This is just a change in how Acuity works. So let's go ahead and get started. So remember, the metric we're trying to beat here is going to be 51k. Okay, that was a bad start there, so we'll just let it reset. So you can see here Relic does count as direct melee damage because it procs Selines. I think we're getting the bar swap delay. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of bar swap. Oh, no, we're not. There we go. I do dabble a little bit into PvP, not as often as some other PvE players do. And I generally don't do Cyrodiil. I generally stick to Battlegrounds instead. And I don't really PvP on like a variety of classes. I tend to do it just on my main, which is a DK. So I used to do it as like a tankier stam DK, and then I kind of transitioned to full DPS stam DK, and now I'm trying out mag DK instead. So that's kind of where my PvP experience lies. So it's really small scale and only on a DK. We're seeing a little bit of a lag here. Yeah, so we're gonna just redo it. I'm having a little bit of a lag spike here, so we'll just, I don't know what's going on. Just change a setting real quick. Because my silly apartment only has wireless, not wired. Which is stupid. Or we should be able to get wired internet on my apartment, but there's no like Ethernet jacks in any of the apartments, and I've been in a couple. I don't know if it's because the landlord wants to save money or whatever, but it's annoying. So the changes to Acuity are kind of why I don't do any sort of build videos until this patch hits live, because if I had done one, you know, like yesterday, that pretty much would have been an embarrassment because they changed Acuity, so that build might not have been good anymore. Alright, so the rework for Acuity, for those of you guys who missed the beginning of this video, is that instead of proccing off of all damage, it now procs off of only direct damage. So that pretty much limits you a fair amount based on what abilities are able to proc it. So it's pretty much like light attacks, your spammable, and that's pretty much it, at least for stamina DPS. And even for Magicka DPS, it's pretty much going to be your spammable, your light attacks. I'm going to redo that because there was a couple of weird things that were happening during this parse. So we hit 49k, could have been higher. There was a couple of weird things happening. So we'll do it again just so we have a working average here. So yeah, Acuity used to proc. On live right now, it procs off of any damage that you deal. So whether it's considered a dot or a direct damage, it'll proc Acuity, or it has a chance to proc Acuity. Now it is changed to only direct damage. So direct damage is pretty much anything that deals its damage in one hit. There are a couple of exceptions here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be basically your light attacks, your heavy attacks. Your spammables generally count as direct attack, direct damage. Your enchants count as direct damage. And some proc sets count as direct damage as well. For example, the new set, Reliquin, does count as direct melee damage. And some monster helm sets count as direct damage. So Veladress, for instance, that has a chance of proccing Acuity because it does count as direct damage. I personally have never seen it and I've never experienced it, but it is a potential possibility there. So that was the change to Acuity. Some people are calling it a nerf. Other people are kind of saying, well, it's not a nerf, it's just changing how the procs happen. And I'm in the camp of this shouldn't really change Acuity too much, but it's all going to depend on the class that you're playing with and how well you are able to lightweave. For a class that's using something like Reliquin, so stamina DPS basically, it's probably not going to be a nerf because Reliquin counts as direct damage, and you have that going all the time, so it pretty much doesn't do anything. But for like Magicka DPS, this might be this might just widen the gap between people who use Acuity. Like if you're very good at weaving, then Acuity is going to be a lot better for you compared to if you're not as good at weaving. Yes, there's a very good chance that Ravager's gonna end up being very good. I wouldn't necessarily say it's gonna be best in slot yet because we still have to, play around with it. But based on tests that I've done, Ravager does seem to be kind of the option to go for now. So it looks like, yeah, so that was another 49, and we'll do one more, see if we can break 50 or not. Let me see if I have Acuity as an add-on here. I should have Acuity as an add-on. I do, I just don't have it activated. Yeah, so Ravaging is a heavy armor set that comes from Velastarius. I think I have it in my inventory, so I can go over Ravaging, why it might be good. So here's Ravaging. It's typically a heavy set. So right now, you only get it in healthy. But you can see here, once Summerset is released, you're able to transmute it into any of the new jewelry traits. So you can transmute it into Robust, Infused, or like I have here, you can Bloodthirsty. And so it becomes a viable option for stamina DPS, particularly because of that 5-piece. When you deal melee damage, you have an 8% chance to increase your weapon damage by 645 for 10 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. Now, the stipulation here is Ravaging is only going to be good if you're using Reliquin, because Reliquin currently, we're not sure if this is like a bug or not, currently acts as melee damage. So so Reliquin will be able to proc Ravager. Now, if you don't have Reliquin yet, like a lot of us will not have access to Reliquin right away, Ravager might not be a very good option unless you're something like a Stamplier that's using jabs or something that has a lot of melee damage coming in. So that's why Ravager might end up being best in slot once you manage to get Reliquin, and assuming they don't change Reliquin so it doesn't count as melee damage anymore. So that's kind of the stipulation with Ravager. If they don't change Reliquin, so basically if Reliquin continues to act as melee damage, Ravager's going to probably be best in slot here. Otherwise, I'm thinking potentially advancing Yokeida, which comes from HRC, might be a good option. That was test that I did yesterday, which was maybe 1 to 1.5% lower than Acuity. So that might be an option. I'm not sure what other options there might be. You can go with something maybe like Hundings, the tried and true Hundings Rage. Briarheart might also be a good option, but I'm going to do one more parse with Acuity, see if we can break 50k, because right now I'm hovering at about 49k. And if we take a look at, let's see our Acuity proc. Oh, I reloaded UI to get the Acuity working. Okay. So Ravaging should be good for both PvE and PvP now. I know it was a set that some PvPers use, which is why it's so expensive right now on live. But now that you're able to trait change it, I think it'll also be very good for PvE as well. So now I'm gonna have to try to pay attention to when my Acuity proc is able to come back up. So you can see there, normally when your Acuity proc is ready, you're able to proc it right away because you have, like, you know, 4 different sources of dots running at the same time. But now that it only procs up the direct damage, so you can see there, like, normally it would have procced by now. Yep, a little bit of lag spike there. We'll have to do it again. It's because of all those lag spikes. Seems to be just an ESO. Yeah, I'm not dropping any frames. Doesn't seem like an OBS, so it seems like it's just an ESO lag thing. Could be that it's Acuity, because that's the only thing that's changed. I'll just do another parse. So yeah, I would say, tentatively, I would recommend potentially picking up some Ravaging if you can find it on the cheap. Might actually be Acuity that's causing the lag, so I'm gonna disable Acuity. Could have sworn I updated it. Let me see. I'll just copy it over from my live add-on because I know I updated on the live add-ons thing. Where is it? CSO live add-ons Acuity. I just have to reload UI now. It would help if I spelled it right. Magicka equivalent is probably going to be Sorority or Burning Spellweave right now. I definitely would have to play around some more with the sets. That's the other thing that I'm going to do when I'm done here with the stamina. I'm going to go on to Magicka and probably like a Magicka Sork. Or maybe. I think I have a Sork. I definitely have a Warden geared out, so I might just do Warden. I know Warden won't necessarily be the most representative of all the Magicka classes, but it's also my favorite Magicka class. Not my best, but my favorite. So my best is still my Magicka Nightblade. Another thing you have to also keep in mind with Sororia is that you have to basically stay in that circle for the duration of the, well, not for a duration of the proc, but you have to be inside the circle every 5 seconds, which is a little bit of a limitation of Sororia. So it's not going to be very good for fights like VAS where you're moving around a lot. So that's kind of the stipulation with using Sororia. So I'd say Ravager with something like Twice Fang if you want to use the Warrior. If you're going using the Lover, then you can just use another damage set instead. That was a little bit worse. It does. Let's check the Acuity uptime. Yeah, so you can see Acuity uptime fell off by a lot, 16%. So we'll just say like 49k, because I can try again, but I kind of want to move on to see how Ravager holds up. Oh, it's because I have 1 infused. That shouldn't matter too much. 2 bloodthirsty, 1 infused difference is pretty small between them. So let's move on to Ravager and see how this holds up. We should be able to tell within like the first, let me make some more weapon damage potions. We should be able to tell by the end of the first parse how Ravager holds up. And again, there's the stipulation that I'm using relic, which counts as melee damage, which helps us proc Ravager. If we're using something like VO, Ravager won't proc nearly as often because we don't have as many sources of melee damage then. In which case, it might be Berserker Warrior again. I'll retry it with Acuity with VO or War Machine, I guess, since I'm on a Nightblade. So we'll do, let's see, we'll do Acuity, Ravager, Acuity, Berserking, War Machine, Acuity, War Machine. So that's 4 more tests. And we might do several of them just so we have more data to work with. Potion will be 56. Nope. Oh, okay. Bar swap delay, Just reload UI. So we're hitting like 49, maybe 49.5 if I had 3 bloodthirsty. So overall, a little bit of a nerf. Good thing with the Ravager is since it can proc on cooldown, essentially, we don't need to necessarily like keep track of when it's cooling down. unlike Acuity, if we want to continue to use Acuity, we'd still have to basically track when our proc is up using the Acuity add-on like I have here right now. So they changed Acuity to proc on direct damage instead of all damage. So currently it procs off of all damage. They changed it so it procs only off of direct damage. So that was 50.9, almost 51. Where's Ravager? 68% uptime on the Ravager. And again, this is with Reliquin. So Reliquin does count as melee damage, which helps the uptime on Ravager there. Okay. So 50.9. We'll try Berserker next. And I'll redo Acuity because actually I do want to do an actual one-to-one, so I'll have all three Bloodthirsty instead of what I had earlier. So Dagger and Axe. So let's go ahead and try Berserking, see how that holds up. Now the problem with Berserking is that the proc lasts for 5 seconds and we're on our back bar for around 6 to 7 seconds. So we do lose all of our stacks whenever we go on our back bar. So I'm wondering if... so that's kind of the main limitation behind Berserking Warrior. Alright, so that time we did 50.4 and Berserking Warrior 5. We had 80% uptime on Berserker Warrior 5. And Berserking Warrior, for those of you guys who don't know what it is, because it's often decom stuff for people who run Hell Raw, when you deal melee damage, your crit strike rating is increased by 400 for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So just do 80% times 2000, and that gives you about... what would it be, about 1600 extra crit chance, which ends up being, I think that ends up being around like 8-7%. So that's the effective additional crit that you get with advancing Yokeda. Now again, this is melee damage, so Ravager is going to be helpful, more helpful there, in order to get the stacks up very quickly. So if you have like Ravager going and then you have your spammable and light attacks, you're able to get basically 3 stacks within a second, versus if you didn't have Reliquin, you'd have to basically do, because I don't think enchants count as melee damage, could be wrong there, but you'd have to do basically 3 spambles before you get all 5 stacks instead of just 2. So that's kind of, again, the downside of using Berserker Warrior. It's best when you pair it with the Relic one. Then we will quickly redo Acuity, this time with 3 Bloodthirsty instead of the 2 Bloodthirsty that I had earlier. Bloodthirsty. So now we have 3 Bloodthirsty, like we should. I'll just re-enchant that just in case we have enough poisons. Acuity on Stamsorks. I don't really play Stamsork enough to really know too much how it would play out. Since they changed it to proc on direct damage, I don't think Hurricane counts as direct damage. I could be wrong. Somebody who has more experience with Stamsork can probably comment. But if Hurricane does count as direct damage, then Acuity should still be fine to use on a Stamsork. It's if it doesn't count as direct damage, then it might end up being a small nerf. I don't think Royo has posted anything on Toxic Raiding Environment looking at Stamsork since the changes to Acuity. I think I missed a couple of my weeds here and there. Certainly feels like I was missing a couple of my weaves here and there. So yeah, that was 49 with 20% uptime on Acuity. So it looks like we lost about 2k DPS from Acuity, probably because we're not getting as many crits on our executes or bows anymore. So we're dropping. So let's see, this is 3362. Let me see if I have a saved parse. Okay, yes, we do have a saved parse from before the Acuity changes where we were hitting 26%. And yeah, so we're losing about 1k DPS just from our bow procs alone. Because you're able to, at least I was able to time it better back when it just proc pretty much immediately when it was off cooldown. But now that it doesn't proc off cooldown anymore, you're going to take a little bit more, you can need a little bit more thinking in order to get that proc off, in order to make sure you're getting that crit when you need it. So I'm missing, like, again, 1k DPS on Assassin's Scourge. Again, I don't think this is going to be necessarily a nerf for the really, really good players who are able to kind of keep track of all these kind of things. But for the average endgame player, this is going to be a small nerf. It's not that bad of a nerf. It's still very strong. It's still very powerful. But we're going to now take a look at what other options there are when it comes, at the very least, to Stam. So this is pretty much going to be across the board for Stam, what I'm doing with the Stamina Nightblade with Acuity. I'm just using it on the Stamina Nightblade just because I kill things faster with the Stamina Nightblade, so we can get through more tests in a quicker amount of time here. Okay, so let's get rid of Reliquin. That's because not all of us are going to be able to farm Cloud Rest for Reliquin right away, so we're going to swap over to a different set. We're going to be going with War Machine, the other set that most Stam Nightblades use. So we'll use War Machine as our 5-piece, so now we no longer have Reliquin. So we'll try out Acuity, then we'll do the other two. So we'll do Berserking Warrior, We'll do Ravager, and then we'll try out Hundings as well, just because Hundings and Briarheart too. So we'll have 4 different tests coming up here. Okay, so I need to upgrade War Machine all the way up to lever gold, just so it's consistent. Acuity is not necessarily RIP. It really, honestly, depends on the level of player. I don't think I'm quite at that level where I'd be able to basically maintain 100% uptime. There are some people that I've seen on various discords that are able to maintain, you know, about 24-25% mechanical acuity uptime. Me personally, that last parse I did was 20% uptime. I didn't look at my other parses, but I'm also not necessarily the best player to kind of look at. But for the average player, I would say that it is definitely going to be a small nerf. You're looking at maybe like 1-2k difference. Is it enough to justify not using Acuity? I'm not sure. We'll have to play around with different sets and see. But if you're running Reliquant right now, it does seem like Ravager and Berserker Warrior both outperform Acuity. So that's something there. Okay, so Stam DK Bis. So Bis for Stam DK, best in slot for Stam DK. If you want to use the Warrior Munda Stone, go with Twice Fang Snake and then like VO or Reliquin. If you can get Reliquin, otherwise just stick with VO, the standard VO. If you want to use the Lover Munda Stone, this will let you use 2 damage sets. So in this case, you would probably want to use VO or Reliquin if you can get it. So VO and probably something like that's what we're trying to figure out now what the second set's going to be. But it looks like if you're able to use Reliquin, Ravager, or Berserker Warrior, Acuity is still going to be very strong. I wouldn't necessarily count Acuity out just yet. Hundings is another good option. Again, we'll have to test out Hundings. I'll actually have to go out to a Hundings crafting station to craft it, because I don't think this is the EU server, so I don't have any. I'm not in the Alcavir exchange, so I can't just port to Hakai's house. Alright, so what was I saying? They were doing War Machine with Acuity here. So the problem with Hundings and Ravager is that you're losing out on Minor Slayer, and I do want to try to keep a Minor Slayer set going, just because I don't want to lose Slayer. Reliquin is the new trial set that's being dropped from Cloud Rust, which is a new trial that's being released with Summerset. It's a very powerful Stam set. Right now, it is actually best in slot for Stam, regardless if it's perfected or not perfected. You can already see the DPS hit we're taking with not having Reliquin, sitting at only around 40k or 38. But we're not quite at execute yet. There we go. So that was 42.8. And this is War Machine with Acuity. So now let's swap out Acuity with one of the other sets that we want to test out. So we'll start off with Ravager. That's because that performed best when we were using relic. So we'll see if losing relic ends up dropping the proc uptime for Ravager. So our Ravager uptime was, where is it? 68%. So that's kind of the metric we want to hit, around 65-70%. We can see if we can do that or not. Have 59 when I drink a potion, so I will just plink that dummy real quick. 31 potions, that should be enough. Summerset Stam DK, Warrior, VO, Sunder, or Ravager. That would work. You would have to put a lot more points into penetration, into piercing, which is not really worth it in my opinion. So if you want to use the Warrior and 2 damage sets, you're putting a lot of points into piercing. It's possible to do it, but you have to make up like 4,000 penetration, which to me is not worth it. Minor Slayer Mundus. I would not necessarily be unopposed to that, having a Mundus that's only good for PvE. I would at the very least allow us to get away from sets like Sororia and Reliquin and things like that, so we can open up more sets. I don't think they'd ever do it, but it's an interesting, like, from a sort of design perspective, to have a way for everybody to get access to Minor Slayer just from using a Mundus. As far as I know, they have not changed the way poisons work. So for those of you guys who don't know, poisons, I'll just pull up the poisons that everybody uses right now. So these double ravage health poisons, it's actually probably easier to put it to show you guys on the comment metrics. First, let's take a look at Ravager, 58%, so that's around 60%. That's not terrible. And we pulled 42.7, so only 100 DPS less than the Acuity parse, so looks like Ravager is still not a bad choice. But yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know what XZCAC is talking about, so we have the double ravage health poisons, which right here, you make them using Fleshfly Larva, Nirnroot, and Nightshade. At least that's how I make them. There are a couple of combinations though. They apply to debuffs, so Creeping Ravage Health and Ravage Health. So the game counts the poisons as debuffs, which means that if you have 2 or more stamina DPS running the same poison, their poison can actually override your poison, which ends up dropping DPS when you have a lot of different stem and DPS running different poisons. As far as I know, they haven't changed it. It still counts as a debuff. So if you have a lot of stem and DPS running double ravage health poisons, you'll see a small drop in DPS. Mayflower, a couple of us from Mayflower got together and tested this out between 4 different people running different types of poisons, and we found that at least with 4 stamina DPS, you're losing about 2k DPS overall from your group DPS if everybody is running double ravage health poisons. There are some other poisons that you can choose to make that are not double ravage health, but what we found was DPS difference between using double ravage health, everybody used double ravage health, versus like 2 people using double ravage health and 1 person using another type of poison and a 4th person using a different type of poison. It's pretty small overall, at least with 4 stamina DPS. If you're talking about like score runners that are running 6 stam DPS, 7, even 8 stam DPS, then yeah, the DPS differential is going to be a lot larger. But for most guilds, just every stamina DPS running double ravage health is fine. You're not going to see that big of a difference in group DPS that way. So yes, they did change Acuity to proc off of direct instead of all damage, so it is going to be a small drop in uptime. At least from my test on a Nightblade, it was about a 2k drop in DPS. But that's kind of based on me. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to affect every single class identically. I personally don't think so, and it's also going to depend on whether Relic counts as direct damage when the patch goes live. So we'll have to see how all that works out. DK getting nerfed. I don't think they're getting nerfed. They didn't. At least I'm pulling the exact same DPS on my stam DK as I am on live right now. So DKs didn't really get a nerf per se. There was a lot of changes throughout that affect everybody equally. So I guess you can maybe say they're indirectly nerfed, indirectly buffed, but yeah. Let me swap over to advancing Yokeda. Oops. And while I am answering questions as best I can. Disease glyph on back bar instead of double ravage health poisons. That was something that I have tested. It's definitely on. I feel like I've tested it before. You can check on my theory crafting playlist, but I feel like I've tested disease versus double ravage health, and it ended up being the disease glyph ended up being not terrible. So I think it is definitely a possible option if you have a lot of stam DPS to have 1 DPS just go with like an infused disease glyph on the back bar. That's one potential option to go there if you are concerned about double ravage health poisons overriding each other. Stam Sorks, again, I don't really play Stam Sork enough to know without testing like what Stam Sork is going to be like due to the Acuity changes. Mainly because I don't know off the top of my head whether Hurricane counts as direct damage or if it counts as a damage over time effect. My gut says it is a damage over time, but I could be wrong again because I don't play Stam Sork enough to know. I can ask Royo in Toxic Raiding Environment if he would know, because he plays Stam Sork a lot more than I do. I will hopefully get to Magblade today. It might not be today, it might be tomorrow or Wednesday. Okay, so Hurricane is a dot. All right. So then, yeah, you'll probably see end up lower uptime on a Stam Sork as well. We will need Perfect Reliquin for what specifically? like for best in slot, because yes, Reliquin right now is best in slot. You won't necessarily need the perfected version of Reliquin. Of course, the perfected version is going to be a lot stronger. Well, not a lot stronger, but it'll be stronger definitely. Alright, so Berserking Warrior, I did run out of resources at the end. I should have done additional heavy attack somewhere in my rotation. But Berserking Warrior, not bad. Again, 42.3, 42.4. And this is a very easy set to get. And looks like our max uptime was 72%, so we dropped 8% from not having Reliquin. So Acuity does seem to be still seems to be coming out on top, at least if you're using War Machine, and this would probably also apply for VO as well. So that's where Acuity stands. It seems like Acuity is still a very strong set to use, so I wouldn't necessarily discount it as necessarily being best in slot. And again, I'm not the best Nightblade. There are plenty of other people in other guilds that are better than me who are probably be able to take more advantage of, you know, controlling that Acuity proc than I do. So I don't think Acuity is going to fall entirely out of the meta, but I do think that at least for the average endgame raider, you know, who aren't, you know, running for scores in VHOF or VAS hard mode or anything, I think we'll see a little bit of a drop in Acuity, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really change things around too much. Let's see, so that was War Machine and Advancing, War Machine and Ravaging, War Machine and Acuity. So let's try Briarheart now. Obviously we can't do Hundings, or we could do Hundings, but then we'd have to use War Machine on our front bar, and that'd change around our bars a little bit. But we can try that, having a Hundings and, I want to say Hundings and War Machine, see how that plays out. A couple of more poisons here because we're running out. Okay, so quick recap right now. Acuity was changed. It used to proc off of all damage. Now it procs off of direct damage. So the big concern here is how is Acuity going to perform compared to other set combinations right now. So right now we're looking at Stam, because Stam has Reliquin, which counts as direct melee damage. So it's direct and it's melee damage. So we're seeing how Reliquin performs with Acuity, and we're comparing it to other sets that we've tested so far. So that's Ravager and Advancing Warrior, and we're also going to be doing Briarheart as well. Right now, and then we're going to test without. We're testing right now without Reliquin to see how those sets that proc off of melee damage, how that the loss of Reliquin affects things. And right now it seems like if you have Reliquin, Acuity ends up losing out to both Ravager and Berserking Warrior, but if you don't have Reliquin, Acuity still pulls out on top, just by a hair. Of course, this is just a single parse for each of the different combinations. This is just to get a sense of where everything kind of stands against each other. So obviously we'll have to do more tests to get an average, but Acuity right now still seems to be the strongest option as long as you don't have Reliquin. Once you have Reliquin, Ravager and Berserking Warrior becomes stronger because Reliquin counts as melee damage, helping you to proc those two effects there. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, and then we're going to hop over to Magicka DPS, probably Nightblade, and see what best in slot is, whether Acuity is still strong. Let me just double check to see if I have a Magblade parse. Okay, I do have a Magblade parse. This is a Templar parse. These are both Templar parse. Okay, so I don't have a. Yeah, I don't have. So we'll have to go over to Magicka Warden to do an actual test. I don't have any Acuity parses from before the change, except for this one on a Magicka Warden. So we'll have to just go on a Magicka Warden to see what the difference is. Not that big of a deal. Okay, so we'll do Briarheart now. Briarheart's the other potential set that could be used as a front bar set, as a proc set. And then we will, oh, I don't want that. Briarheart dagger. Then we will try 5-piece Hundings on the body and do War Machine as our front bar, and we'll have the double slot. We'll have the double slot in cap. which I don't really like, but we'll work with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this next parse. If not Reliquant and Acuity, what combo would I run? Probably do Lover. I'm assuming you're still talking about Stam DK, XC Keck. I'd probably do Lover, VO, and Acuity, probably. Or Lover, VO, and Ravager. The problem with Ravager on a Stam DK is your only source of melee damage is going to be your heavy attacks, so you don't have a lot of chances to proc because your spam bowl is your heavy attack. So I'd probably just stick with Acuity, VO with the Lover Mundus. That is true. All I do have to test is the uptime on these different classes, because the uptime, every single class was able to get like max uptime on Acuity. So if you drop down to like 20% or something, then obviously Acuity is going to perform a little bit worse. I also wouldn't necessarily say War Machine is dead, because it still gives Major Slayer, so you still want that for the group buff. But Reliquant is definitely stronger for personal DPS overall. Yes, Stam Nightblades are still going to be strong. They're still currently, right now at least, the strongest Stam DPS that I've tested. So like Lori said, Stamplars and Stam Sorks will have the highest uptime on Ravager and Berserking Warrior, because they do have spambles, as well as Nightblades. They have spambles that count as melee damage. So Ravager should be pretty good on a Stamplar and on a Stam Sork as well. That was Briarheart on the front bar with War Machine, so 42.5. So it seems like all these sets are pretty close together, with Acuity still pulling out ahead. So Briarheart 42.5. These are not parses. Berserking Warrior 42.3, 42.4. Ravager 42.7. Acuity 42.8. This is with War Machine, not Reliquant. So that's what we're looking at right now, and this is with Reliquant. So Acuity was 49.1. I think this is Berserking Warrior 50.4, and Ravager almost 51k there. So that is what it looks like right now. So now we're gonna have to find, gonna have to port over to, let's see, Reaper's March, somewhere like down here, I think. So we'll go with 5-piece Hundings and 5-piece War Machine, see how that holds up. War Machine's going to be on our front bar as our proc set, so I will have to double bar in cap. So we do end up losing the, 8% additional weapon damage on our front bar from losing Flawless Dawnbreaker. Let me see if I have, do I have a mount set? Don't have a mount set. Let me see how my mount speed is at the lowest. Of course it is. Would it be under pouch of progression, purveyance? quickly just get our mount speed all the way up so we can make it to Hundings super fast. And also get the attunables. Yes, you will get more skill points. So you have all of the main story quests in, well, not the main story quests, but you have the Summerset Isle quest line. That'll give you some skill points. I don't know how many skill points because I generally don't try to spoil the storyline stuff when I do PTS. I generally just look at combat changes. So that's going to be at least 5 additional skill points. Then you have the Sky Shards in Summerset, and then you have 2 public dungeons. So you're looking at probably the 2 public dungeons are 2 additional skill points. So you're looking at probably 7 or 8 from the story and public dungeons. If there are 15 Sky Shards in Summerset, then that's going to be another 5 skill points. So you're looking at about 13 to 14 additional skill points, I think, in Summerset. I'm not exactly sure what the exact number is. The skill points that you have on a template are not accurate because they don't actually account for your what are they called? Sky Shard skill points, so that's not accurate. So this is Hundings. I think all the attunables are in that bank, so I gotta pull out my banker. Tunable. So when I test out other STAM DPS later, I won't have to run all the way back here to make Hundings. Yes, I am currently running the Lover on all these parses. I think STAM DPS are probably going to end up running the Lover. Because the other option would be to run Twice Fang, and I'd rather run the Lover and gain 2 damage sets instead of running Twice Fang and a Warrior. But you could also use Warrior with Twice Fang if you'd like. Okay, so I got all that. Let's go home. So I can just craft it at home, set it down, and craft stuff at home. And yes, Scott, two-hander are going to be stronger in PvE now. They're still going to lose out to dual wield, mainly because dual wield have the advantage of having higher weapon damage because of the passive that they have, as well as having a second weapon. Plus, they also have the advantage of having 2 enchants instead of 1 enchant. So that second weapon damage enchant that you get, or poison damage enchant, that'll also push dual wield over better than two-hand. But two-handers did get a pretty nice buff from the changes. It's just not really enough to beat out dual wield, but that's kind of expected. We didn't really expect dual wields, or I should say two-handers, to win, to end up beating out dual wield, mainly because of that second enchant. Probably gonna have to move that light. Or I can just see if I can shift things down. Oop. Right, there we go. So let's see here. Let's do Hunding's hands and shoes. Let's do Mazatoon. And then we'll do jewelry for Hundings as well. Asylum Magsorks. The thing with Asylum is you have to give up either one 5-piece set or your monster helm in order to use Asylum. I'm trying to remember what I did, because I know I've tested it. I just don't remember what I pulled on it and how it compared to like a 552 setup. But Asylum Magsorks, if you are going to be using Asylum staff with Force Pulse, then Acuity is probably going to be a good option. And that's mainly due to the fact that Force Pulse counts as 3 hits, 3 direct damage hits, and then when the Asylum proc happens and you get that concussed, burning, and chilled, those also count as direct damage hits, so you have a lot more chances to proc Acuity that way. So if you are going to be using Asylum, I think your 5-piece is going to be Acuity and your 3-piece is going to be Willpower. Oblivion damage generally isn't very good in PvE. It's very good in PvP, however. The set you're talking about, I think, is Slowed Semblance, which is the crafted set in Summerset. I have no idea where the crafting station is, but I don't know how that's performing right now. I've seen a lot of complaints on the official forums that it's overperforming, but I don't know if that's just people complaining or if that's like actually what's happening or not. And then I need to get out more machine weapons. Axe and dagger. For non-pet sorks, again, I'd have to go back and test. I know I tested it, but I don't remember if it was recently on the PTS. I would say, I mean, Asylum is still going to be very useful just for the group uptimes on things. But again, I'd have to double check. I think 552 ended up pulling ahead from what I've seen. Magplar PvE. So I was playing around with Magplar last week, playing around with a couple of different options there. So I do have a couple of ideas, but I haven't really tested it extensively. What I was trying out was basically Acuity Master Architect with the melee Magplar. Actually I was using Solar Barrage. That was actually one of these 2 parses. Yeah, so I was using Solar Barrage here. So this is what I managed to get when I was playing around with Magplar earlier this last week. And this was kind of focusing in on, because Solar Barrage gives you Empowered, so I was trying to take advantage of that. So this ended up actually being a clunky rotation, but it was actually a pretty decent rotation because it ended up actually being better instead. So I replaced Solar Barrage with Purifying Light and it ended up being a little bit better. So that was the Solar Barrage. This is the one with Purifying Light. So you can see here, Purifying Light ended up being lower than Solar Barrage. So I need to go back and double check and see if Acuity is still best, or if I need to use something like Burning Spellweave maybe, or like Julianos or something. But I'll have to go back and double check on Magplar. But melee Magplars right now are pulling around, at least me, I'm pulling 37. I don't really play melee Magplar. Somebody else might be able to pull higher with better rotation and different sets and things like that. What was I gonna do? I need enchants. Okay, I need enchants. Okay, so stam. Nothing has changed about jewelry crafting. They changed where you can get some of the different new jewelry traits. So for example, Bloodthirsty now comes from the weekly Trials quest coffer. That's one change that I know they made. There was another 2 or 3 traits that now come from different sources from when they first announced jewelry crafting, but I don't remember those off the top of my head. Yes, you do have to, well, you have to decon a lot of things. Yes, it's going to be a big grind in order to get your all of your enchant, your tempers and things like that. So it is going to be a big grind. You will have to decon. Basically, you have to get 80 dusts in order to get 8 tempers, which is a lot. It's so if we go over to a jewelry crafting station, so here this is the raw material to make the tempers, and you need to basically take 10 of them to create one of them. So you need 8 of these to upgrade one purple ring into a gold ring, for example. So you're going to need 80 of these in order to get a gold jewelry piece. Now, whenever you decon a gold jewelry piece, you will get this. You will have a chance, I should say, of getting this, not the full temper. So it's going to be a really big grind in order to get all of your jewelry from purple up to gold. Then I need to do this. Okay, so now we have 5-piece huntings on our body at all time, and then we have War Machine on our front bar. That's going to be the proc set, so we have in cap on our front bar here. So we can't use in cap on the back bar. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge because I'm so used to doing in cap on my back bar. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I think this is going to probably perform the worst out of all of the different combinations. Yeah, the tempers are going to be tradable, so you can get them, but like Laurie said, they're going to be expensive for a while, I think, just because the grind is going to be so real. But yeah, you can buy them if you don't want to farm all those mats. And you can probably still get them off of the golden, some of them at least. So that'll be an option for some people as well. Just PvP, get your AP, and then buy the sets, assuming you get lucky, and the set that you want is on the weekend trader that week. Oh, the poison injection did not register. That's gonna suck. It actually ended up performing the best out of all of our different options here. So we actually managed to get 44.3k compared to 42.5 and 42.3, 42.7, and 42.8. So if you don't have Reliquin, go 5-piece Huntings on your body and do War Machine on your front bar. It's actually pretty fun. Veldreth is viable in PvE. Yes, Veldreth is very viable in PvE. If you're using Reliquin though, Celine's is going to be better because, again, Reliquin counts as melee damage, so it will proc Celine's while you're on your back bar. So that was kind of the advantage Veldreth had over Celine's. You can get Veldreth to proc while you're on your back bar. Or basically on your bow bar. But now that Reliquin counts as melee damage, you're able to proc Celine's on your back bar. So that pretty much closed the gap between Celine's and Veldreth to the point where Celine's ends up outperforming Veldreth by a small margin, but still pretty good. So sets are looking best in slot for Stam Sorks. Probably the same ones that we're seeing here, so minus War Machine, obviously. Instead of War Machine, you'd be using VO. So probably going to be Reliquin and Acuity, Reliquin and Ravager, Reliquin and Advancing Warrior with a Stormfist. So that's probably going to be best in slot for Stam Sorks. If you don't have Reliquin, you're probably going to end up using something like this, so like 5-piece Hundings, no, not 5-piece Huntings, VO and Acuity, VO and Ravager, something like that instead. Let's see, can you get gold jewelry or gold materials from doing your dailies? No. I'm pretty sure you can't. Gold jewelry, you can only get it from doing vet trials or buying it off of the Cyrodiil vendor every weekend. The Cyrodiil vendor will have 4 different sets, and it's completely random, or they say it's random, which sets are chosen. As for gold materials, you will be able to, you can get like the standard tempers, so that's rosin, tempering alloys, and drow wax from doing your daily writ voucher, or not writ vouchers, but your daily writs, your standard writs. I'm not sure if you'll be able to get tempering materials from the jewelry crafting writs. I'd imagine you'll be able to get the dust, but not necessarily the actual temper material itself. So that's what I'd imagine it's going to be there. So that's going to be what the options are. So it does seem like 5-piece Huntings with War Machine on the front bar is actually the strongest until you manage to get Reliquins for stamina. At the very least, stamina Templars, I should say, and stamina Nightblades. Obviously, if you're a Stam Sork, you're not going to be able to use War Machine nearly as well. If you're a Stam DK, definitely not. So that seems like what it's going to be. So I think that is all the tests that we should do right now for on Stam. Let's move over to Magicka Nightblade now. So we'll move over to Magicka Nightblade. There's a lot of chatter over in over here. Just checking my Discords right now. There's some discussion about what we need to do and stuff. So let's go over to Magicka Nightblade. Figure out what's best in stuff for Magicka Nightblade still. I'm just letting people know the results of my test on Mayflower, because I don't think many of them actually watch my streams. Let me see here. What was it? Rith, Reliquin, Ravager, and Advancing Yokeda did better. And Acuity, War Machine, Fundings on Body, and War Machine on Weapons did better. Okay, so let's get the, so right now we're just going to test what we already have, which is Acuity with Architect. See how that stacks up, what our uptime is looking like. We'll still be using Ellie Weapon as our spamble. Still going to be in melee range, so we're still using Zon. Okay. Automaton. I don't think Automaton's going to be good for Nightblades, because I don't think Nightblades hit the turnaround point for compared to Hundings. But Stamplar, Stam Sork, probably. So for like Stamplar, Automatons with War Machine might end up doing good. I'd have to actually test that on a Stamplar, but I'm not that great with a Stamplar. Comparatively. What Stamblade use if you had no trial gear? That's pretty much going to be just Spriggans, Hundings probably, with the Warrior Mundus. That's probably what I would do. If you can probably do something like Hundings and Acuity, now that you can craft jewelry. Gonna have to grind up your jewelry crafting in order to do that, but that's kind of what it is. But yeah, Spriggan's Hundings is probably going to be worth it. We're still, Hand Banana, we're still trying to figure out if people are dropping Acuity or not. So, Stam Nightblade right now, if you're running Reliquin, it doesn't seem like Acuity matches up to Ravaging or Advancing Okada. But if you don't have Reliquin, if you're using War Machine, Hundings on body, War Machine on... So it does seem like Acuity is still very strong. It's just not necessarily going to be the best in every single scenario. It might only be limited to a couple of different classes. The golden vendor, I'm assuming you're talking about, Ben. That's going to be, when you go into Cyrodiil, it's going to be in one of your alliance gates. That's going to be different for each one. It's usually going to be the gate that's not the one that you port into when you port into Cyrodiil. You just find them, it's the golden vendor, it's a Khajiit. She has like a golden glow around her. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. We're going to be doing Magicka Nightblade, so again, this is still MA, so Acuity and Architect. And we'll see how this all plays out. Certainly seems like it's a DPS loss. Okay, so we got 44, roughly, K, 44K will give us the extra 5 DPS. Not that big of a difference there. Alright, so let's see, Acuity, 24%, so it's a little bit of a nerf. It's like 2% or so uptime, but not that big of a deal. Okay, so taking a look here. Yeah, so Acuity, we got about a 2% drop in uptime, so that's actually not going to be that big of a difference, I think, overall. I don't have a saved parse to compare with. These two are Templar parses. This is a Warden parse, and these two are Stam Nightblade parses. So I don't really have any sort of parses to compare to. But just off the top of my head, just remembering kind of what I've been doing, 44k is a little bit lower than I think what I've been doing. I think I've been able to pull like 44.5, 44.6 normally. So it's only a 2% drop in uptime and acuity on a Nightblade. This is with elemental weapon. So ele weapon, that'll give you 2 additional direct hits because it is your light attack plus the ele weapon damage, and then the random effect that it applies. So burning, concussed, or chilled, those all count as direct damage as well. So you have 3 direct damage hits with 1 elemental weapon. So I think that's kind of what's helping out here compared to like a Nightblade. Plus you also have your enchant obviously as well. So it's really 3 or 4 every second. So it's going to be 3 then 4, 3 then 4 if you're able to proc the enchant on cooldown. Versus the Stamina Nightblade, which is 3 or 2, because you have like the you have surprise attack, your light attack, so that's 2, plus your enchant every other second, so that's 3. So I think that extra hit from elemental weapon is helping to push the uptime for acuity up a little bit on the Magicka DPS compared to Stamina DPS. So I don't think acuity is necessarily going to fall off for Magicka Nightblades necessarily. I'm trying to think of other sets that you could use instead of acuity, because you want to keep Architect for the minus Slayer and Major Slayer boost. But for acuity, I can't think of anything besides maybe like Julianos for more consistent uptime. Burning Spellweave would probably be the other set I would test. So actually let's pull out some Burning Spellweave. Spellweave would be under dungeon set. Spellweave. So we'd want jewelry, and we'd also want to do weapons. We want spellweave on our front bar since it is a proc set, and then we want jewelry. Just because Acuity's jewelry, we'll have to transmute the jewelry to Bloodthirsty, so it's a better comparison. We'll have to transmute this as well to Infused. Stamina Nightblades are going to be stronger. Stamina will still be stronger than Magicka in general. We need more transmute crystals, running low. This needs to be Bloodthirsty. Upgrade our jewelry up to gold. I'm using Mundus on all of my Magicka DPS just because I'm assuming we're getting Alkosh, in which case you would want to use Apprentice so you're not over penetrating with the Lover. But if you're not getting Alkosh on your raid group, then you're going to want to use the Lover instead. You'll end up over penetrating by about I think it's like 300, 400. If you have like Torug's Infused Crusher instead of, and no Alkosh, but that's not that bad. So yeah, I'm using Apprentice here, but you could go with the Lover instead. Okay, so let's try this. Need to get my ultimate back up. Come on. Alright, so we're going to see how Burning Spellweave ends up performing. So this is Spellweave instead of Acuity. See how that performs compared to Acuity. I still think... Oh, I did not enchant jewelry. Thank you for that, Lori. There's Mockery. Yes. So the fact that we got like 24% uptime on Acuity makes me think that Burning Spellweave's probably still not going to be beat it out, but we still have to try it out and see. Because the only other set I can think of that you would use besides Acuity would be Julianos. That's really it. Maybe something like Scathing Mage, maybe? Okay, yeah, so it didn't end up performing better. That's kind of what I expected. Spellweave 56%, 41k. I mean, yeah, I mean the fact that we managed to get 24% uptime on Acuity even after the changes, I mean that could have just been a very good parse. Maybe we got lucky with procs, but yeah, Burning Spellweave doesn't seem to do much better. So I'm not anticipating that Scathing Mage would necessarily be any better either. Just because Scathing Mage, I've never been able to hit higher than like 62%, 60% uptime on Scathing Mage on a Nightblade. But, I mean, it's worth trying out regardless, just because it's a set that's a little bit easier to obtain than Acuity. At least getting the combination of Acuity, or getting a combination of Scathing and Architect is a little bit easier than getting like Acuity and Architect, I think. But we'll have to see. But let's try that out. So with Scathing, again, you would want to have it on your front bar here. You still want Architect. You still want Architect on your body, and that's just because you need to have Fiery Rage on your front bar for that Inferno, for that Destruction Staff ability here. So let's try out Scathing. I gotta find it. It should be here somewhere. Scathing. I'll problem with Scathing is you'd have to run ICP, and that's not exactly a fun. It's not really a fun dungeon to run. I find it to be long and annoying, but that is one option there. Mockery. Right, there's all that. Do that. Upgrade all of our stuff. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Scathing. It was really good back when Path was bugged and it would counter direct damage, but it's I don't see it being much better than Burning Spellweave, because you would still need to get about the same level of uptime, but it only procs off of crit damage, direct crit damage I should say, instead of any fire damage. So personally, I don't think Scathing is going to be worth spending the gold to make it legendary. Oh, we need to get ultimate for Destro ulti. So I did several parses with Acuity. On a Nightblade, the best uptime I got was 20% or so. Or Stamina Nightblade, I should say, my best uptime was 20% or so. I only did one so far with the Magicka Nightblade, but I got 24% uptime on that. So I do want to go back and see if that was just lucky, or if that's kind of more normal. And Acuity is not nerfed. Well, I don't want to say it's not nerfed. It's a small nerf for some classes. It's a non-nerf for other classes. And it's really going to depend on how well you're able to control that proc chance and things like that. So this is Scathing with Architect, just to see how Scathing compares to Burning Spellweave. I don't think it's going to win, but I mean, weirder things have happened. doesn't seem like, yeah, it doesn't seem like Scathing beats out Burning Spellweave. Take a look at the uptime on Scathing. Yeah, it's 40% uptime on Scathing Mage. It's just the conditions of having Scathing Mage proc are too limiting. Again, it's direct critical damage compared to Burning Spellweave, which is any fire damage. So yeah, Scathing is not. I don't think Scathing is going to be a good alternative to Burning Spellweave. You're better off just running City of Ash 1 to farm that Burning Spellweave. Yeah, so like I was saying, I do want to go back and retest Spellweave, or not Spellweave, Acuity, to see if the 24% uptime I got is standard, or if I just got lucky with that parse and got a lot of procs of Acuity off. Like I said, with Elemental Weapon we were getting 3 or 4 direct damage hits, so I'm thinking it should, in theory, be better than a Stamina Nightblade, because we're getting 1 additional direct damage hit. But 4% additional uptime, I'm not sure what to make of that necessarily. Personally, I thought they would like increase the cooldown to like 20 seconds or decrease the proc chance to 10%. But this is a interesting way to reduce the power of Acuity while not like completely destroying it, because it still makes it viable for some classes, but it's also makes it so it's not necessarily the best for other classes. So it'll be interesting to say. Okay, so now this is just going to see again what our Acuity uptime looks like, just so we have a little bit more of an idea of whether that last parse was a fluke, you know, we just got lucky with Acuity procs, or if the Acuity uptime on a Magicka Nightblade actually isn't that bad, even after the proc change. The maximum uptime on Acuity is, I believe it's 27%. Most people are, at least on live right now, you're able to get around like 25%. Oh, you're right, I did knock it out of combat, I think. It should be, well, we'll have to see. We'll see what Commetrics says. Because again, we're not really looking at the DPS, we're looking more at the Acuity uptime. So I'm not really concerned necessarily about the DPS. I think Combat Metrics should be able to tell us the DPS. Yeah, I didn't get a comment from that other dummy. I'll have to wait to get completely out of combat and then we'll see what our uptime was. Okay, so yeah. So that time we hit 43.3k, a little bit lower. We're more interested in Acuity. So that time we got 17% uptime on Acuity, which is actually lower than what we got from... Although this is taking into account a much longer combat period, it seems. So it's probably closer to 20. I'll have to do it again just because I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, that 70% uptime. The Major Slayer was 27%, so Minor Berserker 7. Yeah, so I don't think these numbers are accurate, so I'll have to do it again. That was my mistake. I thought I was out of combat, but I wasn't. Okay, there we go. No, Acuity, or I should say, Reliquin can proc Acuity. Reliquin does count as direct melee damage. We know this because it procs Selene's. And Selene, the condition for that proc is direct melee damage. So Reliquin right now is considered direct damage, which we're not 100% sure if that's like a bug or if it's intended. Right now, I'm assuming it's a bug, but it could actually be intended, who knows. They haven't changed it yet, so it's either more difficult to fix than what they anticipated, or it's working as intended. That was off of my counter. So I did have a little bit of a lag spike there, but if we take a look, we're not looking at DPS, we're looking at Acuity uptime. So 20%, so that's lower than the 24 we had earlier. That did end up resulting in a lower test overall. And if we have 20% Acuity uptime, we're hitting about 40k, then spellweave does end up winning out. compared to using Acuity here. So we'll do another test, kind of figure out what's going on. So here we had 20. The previous one was 24. So that was this one here. This had 24% uptime. So we'll do another one and see if it's closer to 20 or closer to 24. Hopefully it won't land in 22 or something like that, in which case we have no idea where it ends up. But it seems like for Magblade it's going to be a little bit better. One thing that I think what's helping us out in proccing Acuity is the fact that we're using Ellie weapon. Again, that gives us 2 extra hits, 2 extra direct damage hits per light attack. So we have the light attack hit, we have the enchant hit, then we'd have the elemental weapon hit, and then we'd have the the effect hit. So 4 sources of direct damage, plus we have the spell orb passive, which counts as direct damage. That's 5 every 5 weaves that we get. So that should be, I think that's one of the reasons why Acuity is a little bit higher on a Magicka Nightblade compared to the Stamina Nightblade, because we're not using Imbue weapon or Crushing weapon as a spammable as a Stamina Nightblade. Reliquin does have Minor Slayer Lori as the 3-piece, so you're not losing a Minor Slayer if you're running Acuity and Reliquin now. Zon and Elfbane on a Magicka DK, it's still worth a shot, but I've been having better luck, at least before they nerfed Acuity. I was having better luck with burning Spellweave in Acuity, so I'll have to go back now that they've changed Acuity to see how Elfbane and Acuity, or Elfbane and burning Spellweave I should say, compare to burning Spellweave Acuity. I don't think I have a Magicka DK created already. It's going to have to make one before I can go test it again. So again, we're not really looking at DPS, we're looking at Acuity uptime. I would say hold on to your Acuity for now. It's still a good set, it's just other sets right now are performing at least equal to Acuity right now on a Stam Nightblade. So that was 42.4. Again, we're looking at Acuity uptime. Okay, so Acuity uptime was 18% that time. So it does seem like it is more likely that you're closer to the 20% proc uptime on Acuity rather than the 24 that we got earlier. So this parse was probably an anomaly, probably an outlier. The fact that we got 24% uptime because we got 20 here. Hold on. I'll have to do this. So we got 18 here, and we got 20 here. So we'll have to. So it doesn't seem like Acuity necessarily going to be strongest. It's going to really depend on RNG here, depending on the proc that. And I guess the same can also be said for Burning Spellweave. So Burning Spellweave was that parse there, the 41k. So you can see here the Burning Spellweave parse did beat one of our Acuity parses, but our two other Acuity parses beat that Burning Spellweave parse. So now it's just going to be a matter of, well, are you going to be able to get lucky with your Acuity procs and get up to that 44k, or are you going to have really bad luck and get the 42k, or maybe even down to 40k, versus the Burning Spellweave where you're getting 41k. So that'll be interesting to see. And then of course you also have to compare it against Juliano's, which has the constant spell damage buff, so it's more consistent, but you might not necessarily have the same level of burst as if you're running Acuity or Burning Spellweave or something like that. So yeah, that's that. I can't think of anything else besides, I guess the only other thing we have to test would be ranged. If you're ranged Magblade instead of melee Magblade when you're not using Architect anymore, what are you going to use? Are you going to be able to use Acuity, or are you going to use Burning Spellweave and Acuity? Because the old go-to was Burning Spellweave and Acuity. So actually, let's go ahead and try that. I need to get more bag space first. So we'll try Burning Spellweave Acuity, and then we'll try... Well, Saworia is probably going to be best in slot, as long as you're not able to move around that much. So that's kind of why I'm not using Saworia right now. That's because there are going to be fights where you're not going to be able to necessarily stand still the whole time. Then I need to use Scoria instead too. I have to get some Scoria out. Yes, the Ravager buff does carry over to your back bar. The Briarheart buff carries over to your back bar. So anything like that, it does carry over to your back bar as well. And yeah, you won't generally spend 10 seconds on your back bar. Even on a Stamina Sork running Dark Deal, you're going to be on your back bar for about 7 or 8 seconds. So you will be able to, theoretically at least, be able to get 100% uptime on Ravager. Then I need... can't use Zon, I need Scoria if we're doing a ranged setup here. Falcon Scoria. Medium. Then I need to do 2 Magicka glyphs. Okay, so we're going to try out Spellweave and Acuity. So this is what we've used in the past when we're doing range. This is what we're actually using. Well, not this specifically, but this is very similar to what we're using right now on live, running something like Spellweave Acuity and 1-piece Kina on a ranged, or you're doing something like 5 Acuity and 4-piece Moondancer on live right now with Scoria. So we'll go ahead and see how this ends up working out. So we're definitely going to end up doing worse overall compared to being in melee range, just because we're not going to have the same level of sustain, since we won't be able to use Rearming Trap. We'll probably have to do 1 or 2 heavy attacks in order to sustain. But we'll see how that holds up, what Acuity looks like when we're playing at ranged. It's probably going to be a little bit lower just because we do have to use Accelerate for our minor force uptime. Saworia can be, I would use Saworia on your body pieces, so it's always active no matter what. And once I get my ultimate up, so let me see here. Okay, that should be enough. So I wonder if it'll let me pull it out. So I don't need to pull out any pieces here, but you can see here that the 5-piece, dealing direct damage with a single target ability. So this would be basically your spammable. Force Pulse, Funnel Health, LE Weapon, I think even light attacks would proc this. Creates a ring of fire beneath you for 10 seconds. Standing in the ring grants you a stack of Sororia's boon for 5 seconds. Each stack increases your spell damage by 30. You can get up to 20 stacks. And of course, the spell damage stack remains the same here, so it'll be a max of 600 spell damage stack. And it does have an internal cooldown of 10 seconds. So you could potentially use this as a front bar set, because you're typically going to be on your back bar for less than 10 seconds, so you'll be able to get it up again when you're on your front bar again. It's going to be a little bit different on a mag blade because you're bar swapping so much. You can pretty much front bar this if you'd like, but if you're like on a Sorc, you're on your back bar for probably around like 3 or 4 seconds, depending on if you have to use your ultimate or your specific bar setup. So you could use Sororia on your front bar, but you also do run the risk of potentially losing all of your stacks if you don't get the proc timed just right. Now it does last for 5 seconds, so realistically it's going to be more of a 15-second kind of window. So you could front bar Sororia if you'd want, and then have something like Acuity or Julianos be your constant 5-piece set that's up, or Burning Spellweave or something like that. So that is a potential option to do if you're going to be using Sororia there. As for Axe Dagger versus Dagger Dagger, that is a pretty good question. I've generally used Dagger Dagger without Acuity, but Axe Dagger, if you're lucky with the amount of Axe Bleeds that you get, then it does end up outperforming Dagger Dagger. This is going to be a ranged build. I need to put on Accelerate before I forget. I'm going to do Challenge Acceleration. And again, our Sustain's going to be worse because we aren't able to use... You're able to use Trap, which uses our secondary resource. We also won't be able to use Soul Harvest, which causes a, it doesn't give us an interrupt in our rotation. Lets us get some resources back. Yeah, we are going to need a heavy attack. This is on a pure ranged build, so that's kind of why Sustain is a little bit worse. Alright, so there we go. Oops. So 39-1. Again, we're not really looking at DPS, we're looking at Acuity uptime. So we got 23% that time, which is interesting. This is pretty close to what we were pulling earlier. So again, we'll do another one just to see if we can repeat around this same amount of proc chance, so like 20, anywhere between 21 and like 24 or 25%. See if we can get that same level of Acuity uptime. With just willpower and Asylum staff, be better for mag sort to replace Acuity. I'm not necessarily sure it would be better per se for your personal DPS. Having the Asylum staff, the strength of the Asylum staff is you're guaranteed to get those status effect procs every 2 or 3 force pulses, which helps out your group DPS with the increased minor vulnerability uptime. And it also helps improve your personal DPS a little bit by having better burning uptime as well. But I would say it is an option. I'd have to go out and make a Sork and test it out just to kind of see how it all plays out. So we did 39-1. So we'll do one more just to see what kind of uptime we'll get with a second parse. Again, we just want to make sure that that 23% is not like abnormally high or anything like that. We got lucky with RNG, so we do want to kind of make sure that we're not getting something like too high. If our true averages are closer to 20 or 19, that might be a little bit of an inflation there. Yeah, I don't think changing out War Machine or Acuity on your Stamblade is going to matter too much. It's still going to be a very strong combo. Are there going to be better combos? Probably. But, I mean, it's not going to be that big of a loss overall. How are Magplar's next patch? I haven't really played around with Magplar too much. I played around with it a little bit last week with just trying to run around a couple of melee Magplar builds, and I was pulling around 37k, 37.5k. So they did get a nice buff, but overall they're still, melee Magplars still fall behind to DKs and melee Magicka Nightblades, so they're still kind of on the bottom when it comes to the melee Magicka DPS specs, and I haven't tested out range DPS yet for Magplars yet, but I'd imagine they'd fall probably below Magsorks, Magicka Wardens when they have the bear out, and Magicka Nightblades. So Magicka Templars aren't really in a good spot right now. So again, this is just to double check our Acuity uptime from our last parse, just make sure that it all lines up. Alright, so we got a little bit better DPS that time, around 39.9. Acuity, 19% uptime. So it does seem like we're jumping around all over the place with the Acuity uptime on a Magicka Nightblade. So we got 20% uptime then. We got, what is it, 23%? 23% uptime here. So it does seem like there's a lot of randomness going on, but it definitely seems to be lower. We're not able to hit the max uptime of 26% anymore on Acuity. But it does still seem like it's probably going to be the strongest combination, or at least one set in the strongest combination for Magicka Nightblades. Now, whether they're going to be a strong combination for any other class, it's going to be hard to say whether it's going to be best or not. The problem with Magicka DPS is that there's kind of a lack of sets that we can potentially use outside of like Burning Spellweave and Julianos, and Sororia, of course. But since we're already using Master Architect, typically, as a melee Magicka Nightblade, you obviously don't want to use Sororia necessarily because you're doubling up on Minor Slayer, although that 600 spell damage is really nice to have. But that's kind of where it looks like for Acuity. At least for Nightblades, I mean, just based on Nightblades itself, it doesn't seem like Acuity is going to be the best option for Nightblades, but it is definitely still going to be a very strong option. I would not deconstruct any sort of Acuity you have right now. Depending on your specific gear setup, your specific raid setup, things like that, Acuity is still going to be a very powerful set. It's probably going to be something like where Julianos is right now, where it's going to be a very, very powerful set to have that's craftable. It's very easy to obtain, but might not necessarily make the best in slot option, like the absolute best combination of gear for DPS for very least Nightblades. I will have to go through pretty much all the classes to see, but if we're not able to get 25% uptime on Nightblades, I'm kind of hesitant to say whether or not it'll be good for any other class, really, because Nightblades generally have the most amount of direct damage. Now, Mag Sorks and Acuity, that might be probably the best combination, because Sorks generally you have to use Force Pulse. Again, with Ellie Weapon though, you can use Ellie Weapon. It's better for sustain, so it's going to be hard to say whether or not it's going to be good for Sorks. So we'll have to see how. I'll have to test out Mag Sorks and Force Pulse builds to kind of see how Acuity plays with the Force Pulse build. So I think that's going to be it for right now. It's about 6:15 here, so it is about dinner time here, so I'm going to go ahead and make dinner. We will be raiding with Mayflower tonight. Let me just check the schedule. We're not doing anything on the PTS. We are doing SO speedrun and then Maw of Lurkage right afterwards, so hopefully the stream stability will hold up when I swap over to live. I know OBS had an update, and hopefully that managed to fix the stability issues, because I read something about the new Windows update screwing around with OBS. So hopefully that'll stop the lag there. But kind of I guess the whole lesson that we learned here is that Acuity is still a strong set. Definitely got an indirect. It's definitely changed. I think the best players in the game are still going to be able to use it to maximize its potential. But somebody like me, who's fairly average when it comes to like DPS, I don't think I'll be able to necessarily unlock the potential right now. I'm going to have to be a lot more aware of what I'm using the proc and things like that in order to really unlock the full potential. I wouldn't decon it. I still think it's a very strong set, but in terms of mathematically being the best set, it might not be the best set anymore for a lot of different classes. So that's it for this stream. Hopefully I'll be able to get a stream going tonight with the Mayflower, but if not, I'll try to get a stream up tomorrow, looking over different classes and how Acuities are going to go. I'm probably going to try to do Stam DK, Mag DK, and then probably going to try to do Stam Sork, Mag Sork. So I'll try to do two classes tomorrow, both Magicka and Stamina specs. We'll see if I have time for that. I don't have any raids tomorrow, so I'll be able to devote time to that. So that's it for this stream, guys. Hopefully see you guys later tonight. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys, at the very least, tomorrow for some more PTS testing with Acuity.